She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. If you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
So that was late Monday afternoon. This is Wednesday morning, day 11 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. My next guest says he and his team has finally seen activity in a Bitcoin account tied to possibly a ransom note sent to news outlets in Arizona. TMZ founder Harvey Levin's with me now. And Harvey, good morning to you. Terrific work from the very beginning on this. Your outlet received an original letter. You did not receive a second letter where another affiliate did. So by my count, that's 2 letters. And you now report that TMZ has just been sent a third letter. Please explain and describe what you got about 90 minutes ago.
So an hour and a half ago, we got kind of a bizarre letter, an email from somebody who says they know who the kidnapper is and that they have tried reaching Savannah's sister, Annie, and Savannah's brother to no avail. And they said they want 1 Bitcoin sent to a Bitcoin address that we have confirmed is active. It's a real Bitcoin address. As they put it, time is more than relevant. So we have no idea whether this is real or not, but they are making a demand. It's interesting that, Bitcoins fluctuate in value, but it's around $56,000 now, 1 Bitcoin, which is about the amount that the authorities are offering for information leading to the return of Nancy. So I don't know if that aligns, but whoever sent this, and they actually give a name and an email address, but whoever sent this is asking for around that amount via Bitcoin for information that they say leads directly to the person.
Let's take it a step at a time here, Harvey. Take me back to the original letter. I believe you were the one who said whoever wrote that letter, I don't think you used the word meticulous, but I'll use that word, suggesting that the grammar was right. The letter was very specific about the requests and the demands. Does this letter have the same form that you saw the first time around?
No, and I don't think this person is purporting to be that person. Okay. This person is purporting to be someone who probably wrote that first letter. If the FBI's operating theory is right, that they are going on the assumption that the person who wrote this note took Nancy. And so they're not saying they're the kidnappers. They're saying they know who the kidnapper is and will give that information up for 1 Bitcoin. Okay. And again, we looked at this address. It's a pretty bold thing that the address is real.
Okay. There were 2 other Arizona affiliates in Tucson, kgun-9 and another one. Did they also receive this same note? Or do you know?
I don't know. We haven't talked to them.
All right. Now, Harvey,
Bill, we've sent this on to the FBI already.
Okay. Confirmed on that. I watched your interview last night with Sean. You were very careful as to what you said, and I respect that and the contact that you have with authorities. Late last night, there was a Bitcoin address that had $6 million deposited in it. I don't know if that's real or a ruse, but I'm sure you know of it. When you looked at that address, did it match what you saw in letter number 1 from several days ago?
I am not comfortable commenting on this.
Okay, so then it's possible that the Bitcoin address that was requested turned out to be this particular one. And that would
I wouldn't read anything. I wouldn't read anything into this.
Okay, so if the suggestion that money was paid may not necessarily be the case. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. When you watch the camera video that was sent out yesterday, does it make sense for you as to why the FBI would give you this image and that image, but they would not give us the image of the camera being ripped away? And based on some inside reporting, it's been suggested that whoever was standing in front of that door took the doorbell camera with them. It seems to me if they were familiar with that house, they would have known there was a camera there when they approached it. And this whole idea about taking these flowers and sticking over the camera lens, it seems a little foolhardy to me. And if you're right about the initial letter, that they were so careful in the way they constructed the letter itself, this wouldn't match the meticulous nature of that first individual. How do we make sense of that, Harvey?
You see it exactly the way I see it. I could not agree with you more the way you put it, that just the thought that went into this letter doesn't match the thought of somebody coming up fully disguised, knowing that they don't want to be seen, and not even thinking, gee, people have these cameras on their door. You know, you don't have to even have cased her door or property to just make an assumption that she may well have a camera like that, and you should be ready to somehow block it. You know, have a piece of cardboard, have something to immediately block it. And this person walks up almost surprised that there is a camera there, and then walks over and stoops down in the garden area, grabs some shrubs. I agree with you. It just does not align.
Let me ask you another question about some of the activity around Annie Guthrie's house last night. Our reporters have been there. They saw him poking around in different areas, different neighbors' yards and the backyards there, and apparently some of them readily gave access to the FBI. Let me ask you an uncomfortable question. Do we know the status of the relationship between Annie and her husband?
And Annie and who?
Her husband.
Look, no. And look, I know why you're asking this, and let's just put it on the table. There have been all sorts of, you know, reports, especially on social media. People are talking about who it could be. I have absolutely no basis to even raise that. And I'm not saying it's true or not true, but I've done checking the way everybody else has, and so far I just don't have any information to give it credibility or shoot it down.
Okay, let me ask another uncomfortable question since we're in this area here. They have not told us after the garage door closed where the son-in-law went. And the sheriff was very careful not to say who dropped her off, but it's been reported that it was the son-in-law. And is there any reporting after that they've been able to track where that vehicle went when they left her home, assuming they did?
I'm not privy to that information. I don't know. I'm only going to say what I know, and I just don't know.
Okay, understood on that. One last thing. This $300 that was deposited last night that you were talking about with Sean, has that gone anywhere since that was reported last night by you?
I have never said an amount, and there is a reason I haven't said an amount, and I am going to stick to that regardless of what anybody else has said. There are reasons behind why I'm saying that, but I gave my word on something, and I don't want to impede this in any way. And I'm going to stick to what I said, which is simply that there was activity, and I'm not going to say more about what the activity is.
I respect that.
Like that.
Last question then. Do you believe they're onto something here, or do you believe they're closer to a dead end?
Well, look, yes, that they have avenues that they are pursuing. I know this. I know this on one count, absolutely, and on a second count, look, he is dressed head to toe in various items, and I am sure that and I will say one other thing, Bill, that law enforcement has told me they are operating under the theory that this person lives in the Tucson television area, and that's why they've had so much contact with the local television stations there. So I am assuming at this point, and I don't think this is a leap of faith, that they are contacting anybody who, while you're showing the glove there, anybody who might have sold a glove like that, who may have sold a backpack like that, may have sold a sweatshirt like that, pants like that, anything, that they are contacting them, because we have seen time after time that one of the ways they catch people is that they will find somebody who bought something 2 weeks ago, and they look at the surveillance video of who's in the store. Even if they paid cash, they have a time on what to look for and who goes to the cash register with the item and walks out. And that happens all the time in law enforcement. So I think what he's wearing, aside from the fact that somebody may be familiar with it, they are going to try to find out who bought it. And if they bought it within a fairly narrow time frame before this, because these are not things that I would think people just ordinarily have. I mean, the gloves are bizarre. So I would think they are contacting all sorts of establishments. They would probably contact manufacturers, but certainly retailers, and then to see if you can nail down who bought something like that, and then look at surveillance video, and that tells a whole story, because whoever bought that did not walk in looking like that.
Harvey, how much more time do you have? I'm told that you have a deadline here. Can you still talk with us?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to bring in my colleague Dana, and let's go ahead and open this discussion up. And I really want to drill down on what you told Sean last night. You said when that first letter arrived, you read it. This is a really intelligent person who knows how to express the thought. They have thought this out. They cover everything they need to cover. That's a very intriguing answer. Can you take that a step further?
Well, yeah. I mean, and we've been saying this for days now, that I would assume, I mean, if I were putting an APB out, and I'm not law enforcement, but if I were putting an APB out, I would ask people in the Tucson area, do you know anybody who is intelligent, who is tech savvy? And now you can say someone with a somewhat stocky build, with a mustache and a beard and or goatee, and somebody who has just gone MIA over the last week, because I'm assuming this person is not walking around in public. And to me, you know, that's a clue, because I think all of those things align. And, you know, reading that first note, I think it is an intelligent person. I think it is a tech-savvy person, because we were on the phone with the FBI a couple hours after we got the letter, and everybody was trying, including my IT team, trying to figure out something about who sent it, and we hit a dead end. So it's somebody tech-savvy, and, you know, that's at least an avenue to go. But, you know, there may be something with a Bitcoin. There may be something with, you know, that kind of description, you know, in terms of a lead. There may be something in terms of tracking down who was wearing something like that in the past, or whether it was purchased. So there are avenues they are clearly going down to try and figure out who this is.
Okay, Harvey. More to come. Appreciate you sharing what you have. Thank you, Harvey, from TMZ.
Sure, Bill.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.